Hi, good morning everyone and welcome once again to our class in law-related studies. So, kumusta naman mo? I hope that you are all fine and you are doing well in your studies. So, we will move on to the next topic this morning, and I hope you understood many things pertaining to our last lesson. That was a point of reflection among yourselves if indeed you are interested to enter the life of a teacher, considering the great responsibility that you will have with your students. No? The principle of in loco parentis, or the special parental authority. That really is a very important decision for you to make, knowing that you have great responsibility and liability whenever or if ever something will happen to your students. Anyhow, just remember the defense. And not only the defense, but the thing that you should always remember when you are dealing with your students. Remember, the diligence of a good father to his children. So that when you are with your students, you should also make sure to observe that diligence, making sure that everybody in your class is safe. Okay? So, this morning, we are moving to a new topic, and this time we will be talking about certain laws that will affect the lives of your pupils and even yourself. Being students, you should know about this law. I am referring to Republic Act or RA 7877, or known as the AntiSexual Harassment Act of 1995. So RA 7877 was promulgated into law in 1995 because it tried to address the rampant cases or problems of sexual harassment. Thus, this is a special law that will penalize, that will punish anybody who is a culprit or anybody who violates this law. So when can we say that sexual harassment is committed? Or what is sexual harassment? There is sexual harassment based on three descriptions or situations. Number one, there is sexual harassment if there is a behavior that is unwanted or unwelcome. Meaning to say, sexual harassment is committed when the person committing the crime exhibits certain behaviors or actions that are unwanted or unwelcome by the person who is the victim of the action. Meaning to say, the victim feels violated. The victim feels offended by the action. She doesn't like it or he doesn't like it. That is why if that is being felt by the victim, then it is assumed that sexual harassment has already been committed. So take note, there is an exhibition of a behavior by the culprit or by the one who violates the law, and this action or behavior is unwanted and unwelcome. The second is the behavior is sexual or related to the sex or gender of the person. Meaning to say, going back to number one, there is sexual harassment if the behavior or the action being committed or done by the person violating this law has sexual undertone. It is related to sex and also to the sex or gender of the person. Okay? So what are actions that have sexual undertones? It can be caressing. No? Of course, for many of us, we can identify or we can determine whether touching in any part of our body is simply touching or caressing. No? We can feel whether the touch is ordinary or malicious. So that is one. Another action that can be considered with sexual undertone is jokes, green jokes, or even staring at your body. Mura ka og gihubuan sa ijang tinan-awan o pagtutok nimo, and other similar actions or behavior. That this behavior must have sexual meaning or sexual undertones. The third is the behavior occurs in the context of relationship, where one person has a moral power than the other. In this regard, this is an important element of sexual harassment because we have to consider the relationship between the culprit and the victim. That is why, for example, in the workplace or in an office, the one committing the crime must be a supervisor or a manager, and the victim is a clerk, a secretary. In the school, it can be a teacher and the victim is a student, or the head of the unit and the victim is the teacher. In a training center, it can be the coach who is doing the crime and the victim is the player or the athlete. So these are the considerations when we can say that sexual harassment has been committed. So in school or any educational institution or training environment, sexual harassment is committed against one who is under the care, custody, or supervision of the offender. Okay, so this is what I refer to as the presence of moral ascendancy of the offender over the victim. Also, against one whose education, training, apprenticeship, or tutorship is entrusted to the offender. So it can be your practice teaching supervisor, it can be your cooperating teacher, or for the cases of athletes, it can be their coaches or trainers. Okay, so take note that the person doing the act, violating the law, are those who are in charge of their victims. They have this moral ascendancy over their victim. And also, when the sexual favor is made a condition of passing, or for the grant of honors and scholarships, or for the payment of a stipend, allowance, or other benefits, privileges, or considerations. Okay, so take note of that. If there are teachers who will say or approach you, hagbungonon ra ba ka sa akong subject? No, tabangonon ra ba ang imong grado? So, I would invite you for a dinner, mga ligo batag dagat, o there are offers given to you by your teacher in lieu of your passing the subject. There is also sexual harassment when the sexual advances result in an intimidating, hostile environment for the student, trainee, or apprentice. Meaning to say, the sexual advances has made the student or the trainee not at ease anymore. He feels discomfort. He is not comfortable with the presence of the one violating the law. So take note of this. What are the considerations or what are the behavior being exhibited or the situation that will occur so that sexual harassment is committed. So you see, it is important that you should be aware of this. No, being students at this point in time, you can be a victim of sexual harassment. And in the future, when you are already teachers, you can also be the culprit. You can also be the offender. So take note that there is this law, the AntiSexual Harassment Act of 1995, that will protect the victims. Okay? That will protect the victims of harassment. So whenever you feel that you are a victim of sexual harassment, you should report this to proper authority. Or better yet, you file or write a formal complaint to be submitted to the Office of the Student Affairs and Services. No, it is important that there is a written complaint so that there is a basis for taking action, now calling the attention of the one who is committing the crime. Okay, so if in case a formal complaint has been submitted to the concerned office, and this will not also preclude you from filing a case in the proper courts, wherein if the culprit or the offender is found guilty of the charge, then there can be 3 forms of penalty: civil liability, administrative, and criminal. So for civil liability, the victim may demand for payment for the damages that he or she has experienced during the time of the harassment. Okay? Administrative, the teacher may be removed from the office. No? He will be dismissed from the school because of the offense. And the third is, he can be imprisoned. He can be imprisoned because imprisonment is one penalty or punishment for those who commit and are guilty of sexual harassment. So take note and always remember that a victim has a voice, a victim has a right to defend himself or herself from sexual harassment. I hope that this is clear to you. You have understood very well the law so that you will be guided, you as a student and in the future being a teacher, that these things will not be committed and there can be no violation against the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act.